Hello everyone, and welcome to the climactic conclusion of Mega Man X2, where we finally fight the dreaded question mark. And joining me today for that is Skyzo. How you doing?
Hey everyone, it's been a little while.
Magna Centipede stage? What are we doing back here?
Yeah, what are we doing back here?
Something about a central computer, although the game never directly answers that. But anyway, no collectibles or anything this time, nor any achievements to worry about, so we can just speed burner our way and air dash through the level. And if you get hit, destroy some of the purple blocks or the small ones to try and get health.
Alright, so far so good.
Now, we're hanging here because I actually got the Shoryuken a bit wrong in the last episode. The method I showed you was forward, down, forward, then shoot. Or forward, down, backward, and shoot. That'll work, but it's not quite correct, which some of the speedrunners were quick to point out. And I'm very thankful for that. Actually, what you want is forward, down, down, forward. And I don't mean down, forward as in that order. I mean press them both at the same time. So it's basically left, down, down, left, or right, down, down, right. And that will make it significantly easier to land these inputs. I'm about to show off the difference right now. Look at how consistently I'm getting it with the new input directions. Do you see that, Skyzo?
I do, that's night and day.
Yeah. And even the backwards Shoryuken is easier with this, so that's gonna be especially important because the Shoryuken actually allows you to exploit a very abusive trick. So first, get to this chair where your fist is touching the edge. And then Shoryuken so that X is in the middle of the room. He's supposed to freeze, but here he's standing in the center instead. And more terrible translation. Look who I found wandering around. My friend here has a small problem with you. It seems you let him die, and he's not too happy about that. I think it's time he repays the favor.
Ooh, that's a nice intro.
Mm-hmm. This one's exactly the same. You know, the translators glanced at the script occasionally, you know. Okay, so there's some interesting things I'd like to note. Basically, in an interview with Inafune, Zero was supposed to be the updated X, but the higher-ups told him to stick with something more similar to the old design, so Zero ended up being the cool side character instead. You're tracking with me so far, right?
Yeah, so far so good.
I like this shot here too, them standing back to back. It actually looks better than it would have been if they did it as intended.
Well, it does look smarter since, you know, they cover both sides, but...
So, he dies in X1, but Inafune's looking at that thinking, you know, how about we bring him back? And so they did. The control chip. It has all of his personality and everything in it, so the core of Zero is still in there. Even though he was bisected and lost an arm and was bleeding oil. And if you do a Shoryuken as his health is filling up, you just become invincible and Sigma just swats at flies.
Wait, really? Wow.
Yep. Now, as long as you don't miss the Shoryuken, you don't want to do it while he's slashing, because he has invincibility during that. You want to do it as he's throwing the electric sparks. If you do a Shoryuken and miss, you become vulnerable again, so keep that in mind, but yeah, pretty easy trick.
Oh, this is cool.
And there we go. The game's over. Now, clearly that's not going to make for a very exciting final confrontation, so let's get rid of the upgrades, and let's assume we didn't fight the X-Hunters, because that whole thing with Black Zero and destroying him only happens if you got all the parts. If you skipped any of the X-Hunters in the opening stages, you have to actually fight Zero. Fortunately, he's not too tough, because you see, as you're gonna notice, everything he does is in reaction to you. This ground combo is when you're on the ground after he's recharged. And if you just shoot a bunch of pellets, he'll keep blocking them ad nauseum. So don't rely on those, obviously. If you're in the air as his timer resets, he'll do that ground burst thing. And then if you want to, you can just cancel out his shots with a bunch of rapid fire pellets. So once you figured this out, you just go by a fixed pattern that I'm about to show you now. Jump ahead, negate the shots, charge up to full again, negate the shots, and that's the entire fight until the end. He is weak to Speed Burner, but it only does 2 damage, and it doesn't cancel out his shots nearly as well as the neon shots do, so I would recommend sticking to those.
Alright, fair enough. So it's almost like a rhythm fight. I like it.
Indeed. That way, you know, it's 3 boss fights at once, but none of them are hard enough to be unfair. The fights themselves are balanced around the fact that they know it's a boss gauntlet, and that you may not have everything.
Alright, I see it. That's a smart design choice.
So, the games start getting more plot heavy as they go on. Capcom starts thinking that it can write, especially from X4 onward. But this ability for Zero to just come back tanks it. Tanks it completely. It opens up all these questions like, how come X never tries to rebuild all the guys that went Maverick once he blows them up? Apparently, Zero could take some pretty serious punishment and still be fine. This isn't even the first time he comes back to life in this series.
Yeah, it does. You know, lowers the stakes in general, which is a shame.
It calls into question every other death in the series, because there's other guys that, like, sacrifice themselves, or they're good guys who happen to be on the wrong side. And it's so much harder to take those seriously when I'm just asking why they can't just be rebuilt too.
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't think any of those questions are ever addressed directly, right?
They are not.
That is unfortunate, to say the least.
So make sure you charge up the Sonic Slicers, as that's what Neo Sigma is weak to, and now we're gonna see what he's really like. Get on the walls immediately, and when he teleports like that, stay on a side, and once you see him appear, dash, then release the shoot button. Do not lure him into the center, or it's gonna be much harder to dodge that claw swipe and the Electro Balls. And as for the Electro Balls themselves, well, actually first let's cover this plagiarized move. Remember how electricity was his weakness last game?
Yeah?
Well, Sigma's learned. He's stealing your moves. Do you see that?
Oh, does he steal all of them?
No, just for X2, but it was really cool that he did so. It's like he learns from his fights.
Well, yeah, that's really nice, actually.
But yeah, as for the Electro Balls, the secret is to either go up really slowly or go down really slowly, and if the last trailing one is level with you, dash under it. And you want him at the left or far right side of the room, or else the wiggle room is much harder. That's the secret there. This fight is decidedly less dynamic. This is basically what the entirety of it looks like. Do the laser thing that you dodge just by being next to him, lure his head into about the center, be below him as he spawns those enemies. They even drop health, which is really absurd, and just make sure you're shooting charged shots at him. He's immune to pellets. That's about it, really.
Well, that's a little underwhelming.
I mean, he switches things up a little bit when he gets down to 16 HP, but yeah, I always thought so too. The first form Sigma is the real final boss of this game, and definitely the coolest. He basically fights exactly as he did when he was Jedi Sigma, just tweaked a little so that he's much more of an actual threat.
Well, I think the problem here is that maybe the developers got a little carried away with the chip, and they wanted something that looked cool, and yeah, by the time they were done, I would imagine it was difficult to redo the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh well. I still enjoyed Wolverine Sigma though. He's a really talented cosplayer, as you'll see in the rest of the X games.
Well, he did look intimidating, so you got that right.
Alright, so once we go below 16 HP is when things change up a little bit. See, he'll start teleporting around and try to catch you in his jaws and keep doing 1 damage to you, but that's a good thing for us, because we get him to just stand still so we can strike chain him to death like that. Does 2 damage, but it's also sort of a close range attack, so that's when it's convenient to do it.
That is a really cool animation.
Indeed. Also points to Sigma being a bit otherworldly as it becomes clearer and clearer as the games go on. Otherworldly as in not quite like the other Reploids. Also, here's another slight thing lost in translation. The localization says the last of the Doctor's creations. This says the last of Wily's numbers. Because in the original classic series, in the credits list, all of the Robot Masters were numbered. From 1 to 9, 10 to 17, 18 to 26, as Dr. Wily kept making more and more of them. And 0 is the last of Wily's numbers, so it's a mythology thing that unfortunately was lost by our translators.
Alright, well, now for the final cutscene.
Indeed. Gotta escape the castle, just like Ninja Gaiden, of course. No epilepsy this time, though, that's good. Remember Ninja Gaiden 3?
Oh yeah. Well, this game has some moments like that too, but nothing quite as bad.
Alright, let's see how the translators did on this one. Joined by his friend Zero, Mega Man X gazes out over the sea. Sigma has once again been destroyed, but X wonders if the fighting will truly end. Was Dr. Light's dream of a world in which Reploids and humans live together in peace merely a dream? The price of peace is often high, X thinks to himself. Who or what must be sacrificed for it to become a reality? Well, I mean, they got reality at least. That's something. And when the time comes, will he be able to do it? The future holds the answers. Or... And then it just trails off to or. They don't even complete the thought.
Well, that's a little bizarre.
Like, and it's not like they're blind to what they're translating, because, like, there's a bit as you're fighting Sigma where he references you letting Zero die. Not intentionally, but you failed to save him. They completely made that up, which, you know, it's true, but they couldn't have known that unless they were familiar with the last game. So it's not like this was translated out of context. And there are other lines that they get bang on, so it's like, how do you have a group of translators that are just comfortable throwing out entire chunks of your script?
Yeah, it's a little strange, to say the least.
And fortunately, none of the other X games are like that. They tend to err on the side of being too literal, where they're so faithful to the script, they don't rephrase things like they should. X5 is like that, X6 is like that. X3 and X4 are actually pretty good, especially X4's localization. The story they were localizing was garbage, but the localization itself was good.
Well, I would hope so.
Indeed, and even X1, like X1 also kind of had some loose translation moments, but X1, it's like, okay, that's not quite what they said, but close enough, it got the idea across. No other game was this crazy with the liberties they took. Not even close.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, I realized it by the end with the weirdness going on.
Who or what must X sacrifice to make peace a reality? Anyways, though, what did you think of this game, Skyzo?
Well, I mean, I enjoyed it. It seemed fun. And as to... Oh, I see that you, like, thanked the new subscribers. And, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, compared to the last game, I would say that they're kind of similar. I think I like this one a little better, though. It seemed a little more fun.
And why is that? Seemed a little more mechanically complicated without going overboard with it?
Yeah, just a little, more polished. I always like to see that.
Definitely a lot more fast-paced, I will say that.
Well, I do have a bias for games that are faster paced, so I did notice that, and I enjoyed it. I think I'll be playing it very shortly.
And it also introduces optional bosses to the series, and they've kind of been stuck around since, well, X7 got rid of the optional bosses, which is unfortunate, but oh well. X8 might have added them back in, but yeah, I think this is probably the best X game, just in terms of polish and tradecraft. Probably in general, I would say. Like, it took everything that was wrong with X1 and fixed it. Polished it out. There's a million little touches, like the way the armor pieces will give stacked bonuses, like set equipment in MMORPGs. There's, like, the weather effects in Wire Sponge's stage. There's little touches like Sigma stealing your moves and fighting like he did in X1. Like, everything just feels so big, and even the story, it's not quite as complicated or as gripping in a vacuum, but it's a nice change of pace from X1, which was actually pretty depressing. Like, literally the first thing X says in X1 is, I guess I'm not strong enough to beat the boss that just whooped my butt in the prologue.
Oh yeah, that's true. But yeah, in general, I would say that, as somebody on the outside looking at the series, so far this has been the best one.
Indeed. Like X1 was about tragedy, which was reflected in Zero's death and the credits sequence. This one is about triumph, which is reflected in Zero's resurrection and also the credits.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little more uplifting, I would say.
Indeed. And of course the graphics were pushed so hard that the game chugged at times.
It actually did that very often, especially with the little, things with the wireframe animations that they did. Rudimentary 3D. I noticed that the game lagged very often, and there's also a lot of projectiles on screen, so the game kind of struggled to handle those too. That was a little strange. I've never seen a game lag this much without mods or if it's a ROM hack or something. It's unusual, but I didn't mind it personally.
And the soundtrack, I like the soundtrack too. I think the instruments were a bit lower quality than X1, and maybe they tried a little too hard to make it more hardcore with guitars and very short loops and all, whereas X1 was just, let's make a bangin' soundtrack without worrying about style or anything, but still really good. Overall, this is a great game, and probably the pinnacle of the X series. Although I do like X3 a little bit better, but only because X3 does some things that appeal more to me, personally. We'll see what you guys think when we cover that.
Oh, that's going to be exciting.
Alright, this has been Fiona Day Quester signing out. Have a nice day, everyone, and God bless y'all.
Alright, I'll catch you all later.
Bye!